all these things are interconnected, though, because we've been covering the police killings where you have, I mean, nearly $700 million has been spent by the city, borrowed money, most of that, to just pay settlements. Do you see it as kind of an intentional, systematic effort to basically push black and poor people out? We've seen it in New York City, we've seen it in San Francisco, I mean, we've seen it in parts of Ohio, other communities, Flint, Detroit. You see a Whole Foods run. It seems like to me, the more time I spend here, it's a tale of 2 cities, 3 cities, and it's intentional from City Hall that is basically spending millions and millions of dollars on beautifying a 10 to 15 block radius downtown.
That reminds me of my parents, who used to talk about the soup kitchens during the Depression. Just make everyone think that bread and soup is good and all the world will be fine. Well, it's not fine. It's just not fine. We need real change in Chicago to address the police issue and the crime issue that you just mentioned. I believe that Rahm Emanuel runs things through executive order, much the same as Trump does on our national level. We have a city council. It's supposed to be a legislative body. They're not supposed to be making all these decisions at the top with the mayor and a couple guys in the back room, one of which is my alderman, who's the floor leader for the mayor. Why are they making all these decisions without the public? We pay enough taxes to have fully funded police. And I'm not saying police are the only answer, but I believe that our system is now cutting back everywhere to avoid paying pensions. I think they don't want to hire new people. Rahm said recently, we're hiring 100 new police officers, but he forgot to tell us that 600 just retired. So we have a constant issue here of bait and switch. No one really can tell what's going on exactly. You have to just stand up and ask constantly and consistently, and you have to build power. And I'm so admiring the Black Lives Matter movement and other movements and communities that are building power. This is how you take your city back. That's what we teach in public schools, which, by the way, is why many people want to defund public schools.
Mm-hmm. And you see Rahm Emanuel do all this nice, sweet talk. He went against Trump on several things, but he's running the city very much like a Republican, frankly worse than some Republicans. And essentially, you talk about schools being shut down. You can't get a public hearing about high lead levels found in hundreds of homes. Who knows if it's in the schools? I don't know if they're testing the schools. This is a Democrat. I think this is what people aren't getting, because the national media, it's all Trump all the time, but you have Democratic politicians that are essentially just continually, replenishing their coffers. And basically, I mean, the police department wants assault weapons here. The police department is fighting having to report when they not just fire a gun, but whenever they point their gun or use their weapon. They don't want to have to report that. You got the police union here, one of the strongest unions in the country, does not want to move an inch. Can you kind of talk about the machine a little bit more? Because I think a lot of people don't get that Chicago's machine is a whole nother animal from other cities and states. I mean, it seems like they're all just kind of in bed with each other, covering for each other, and it's just hamster wheel of money moving to very few people.
I think that's true. One thing I want to point out that many people don't realize is that mayor and aldermen in Chicago are nonpartisan positions. They're on all ballots, as my name was and will be in 2019, which means our big shots with the big wallets don't have to line up with any party ideals. They get to office and they don't owe us anything. They start cutting deals immediately. They have no right to decide how our neighborhoods should look based on where they can make money. We no longer have 3 branches of government, nationally or locally. Mayor is a completely executive position, and yet he's running it basically like a corporation with executive order. We need legislative bodies that are in fear of being voted out. We're the only major city in the country that doesn't have term limits for mayor. And I normally wouldn't want term limits for a legislative position, but a person who does nothing but build power by awarding contracts and getting donations is dangerous for a lifetime. In addition to that, just look at how he runs the schools. And notice I said he runs the schools. He's my boss. Rahm Emanuel can literally close a school, move staff around, cut a department, and use corporate words like underutilized. Who in the world would ever look at a child or a family and say they are not entitled to anything, their environment is underutilized? That's a development term. That's a term that was developed by corporations to keep throwing in people's faces. And eventually people start to drink the Kool-Aid and say, yes, underutilized, must be closed. So we have too many people marching to that tune in Chicago, and it's the same with the crime. It's the same with everything. These are not dangerous neighborhoods because people are dangerous. These are dangerous neighborhoods because people are desperate. We're not even basically educating people in Chicago in some neighborhoods because they had to be bused or drive miles to charter schools. Privatization is robbing people of valuable resources, and that's where some of the money goes. You asked about that. Privatization awards a contract to a private entity, so my tax dollars no longer have any public accountability. I can't ask the corporation to open their books. I can't ask them where they invest them around the world. For all I know, they could be buying guns in the Middle East because I don't know what corporations are running some of our private services.
And also, I mean, Emanuel, it's like a giant wet kiss to these developers. I mean, developers are running the city, and developers are being awarded all sorts of contracts to reinvent and redefine neighborhoods without any public input. I mean, you look at what's happened in downtown with the Riverwalk. It's nice, but at the expense of the broader community. And we've seen it in New York City too, and it's straight up pay for play, and it's outward corruption. And then you have the police department and other public officials demonizing black people, you know, as gang members, and, you know, they're violent and this and that, when you're robbing them of any chance to earn a living, of any chance to be educated, and now in the instance of lead, who the hell knows what's in their systems? So it's kind of like a beat and oppress, and then blame the victim.
Blaming the victim is a very old game in our societies. It's fallen on the heads of many of us, from women to children to people of color of both sexes. We can't allow it anymore. It's unthinkable. We pay taxes because we expect services and protection. And when protection means letting me know there's lead in the water and what you're going to do about it, that's what our tax money should be spent for. We need schools to not have 30 or 35 kids in a classroom. We need schools to have 20 kids in hard-risk neighborhoods. Mayor Daley, former Mayor Daley with Arnie Duncan, developed a per-pupil budgeting program where they could then shove money to charter schools based on how many children they have. Well, that also allowed them to close public schools because fewer kids meant fewer dollars. We should not be asking kids to cha-ching up for services. Every child deserves a fully funded school. So back to the point you made about these angry young people, they have a right to be angry. I support their anger. I have no way to make it productive unless the system stops wagging the dog. We are the big dogs, we are the voters, and we need the ones to make these decisions. Rahm Emanuel not too long ago proposed swinging gondolas across the Chicago River downtown, like from big high wires like they have in Disneyland. I'm speechless.